The more I tell you about this whole story and the people involved, the more bizarre and unexplainable this entire situation becomes. It's been 15 years and we're still no closer to finding out what actually happened to the Jamison family. Hi, my name's Yasmin and I tell stories about topics that are scary, disturbing, or true crime, so if you'd like to, then please subscribe, give the video a thumbs up, and we'll get on with the rest of this story. In 2009, in Eufaula, Oklahoma, 44-year-old Bobby Jamison lived with his 40-year-old wife, Sherilyn, and his 6-year-old daughter, Madyson. They rarely saw their friends, and they would even go months sometimes without ever contacting any family members. Neither Bobby or Sherilyn worked, and this just meant that they basically just chilled out at home most of the time. And the reason why they were able to afford all of this was because in 2003, Bobby was in a terrible car accident which resulted in quite a bad back injury. And due to this, his family lived off the disability payments that he would receive as a result of this injury. Sherilyn, on the other hand, didn't work because she had quite severe bipolar disorder. It was very poorly managed. I guess it wasn't severe, it was just poorly managed. She'd forget to take her medication half the time, which meant that she'd have this tendency to be kind of unpredictable. She'd have these episodes of severe depression, and she'd be a bit off sometimes, so she couldn't really hold down a full-time job or anything like that. Bobby and Sherilyn were quite interesting people, I guess. They had these really strange beliefs. So in particular, they believed that their house that they lived in was haunted by multiple evil spirits, and in fact they'd have friends and family over who would admit that when they visited, something just felt off and they felt very depressed and down inside their home. And Bobby and Sherilyn were so convinced that there were spirits on top of their roof, 3 or 4 to be exact, and they were getting very concerned about this, so they approached their pastor. They asked their pastor whether they could have the house cleansed or whether there was like a special gun they could use with special bullets that would target these spirits. I don't even know, but that's what they asked for, and the answer was no, obviously. Sherilyn did end up purchasing a satanic Bible, and apparently she did it as a joke, but Bobby actually took it pretty seriously and he read the whole thing, I guess to learn more about these spirits. I'm not really sure why, but he did, and I think he was really into it. I'm actually not sure why Sherilyn bought the satanic Bible, but I think it's got something to do with the fact that she herself believed that she was a witch. And she was also very into witchcraft. On their property, they had this storage container, and she'd just spray paint all over it from time to time, and she'd write really odd things on it, like 3 black cats were killed in their neighborhood, and that witches don't like their cats to be killed. Basically just warning the neighbors to not mess with them or any black cats in the vicinity. Because of the dislike they had for their neighbors living so close and the whole ghost situation, the family made plans to move over to a remote part of Panola Mountain, which is situated in Red Oak, Oklahoma. Their plan was to buy this big plot of land and to plop their storage container in the middle of it and call it their new home. So they really just wanted to be isolated from society at this point, and the first thing they did to get this plan into motion was pull Madyson out of school, with the idea that Sherilyn was going to actually start homeschooling her once they moved over to Panola Mountain. On October 8th, 2009, the Jamisons packed their bags into their pickup truck and set off to go look at a plot of land that they were potentially going to purchase on Panola Mountain. So none of their friends or family knew that they were going away, which was actually not really out of character for them. In the past, they'd gone away for nights on end and no one knew where they were, and then they just like randomly show up. So it was a very normal thing for them to do. The Jamisons had the idea that they would probably stay away for about a night or two, So they also ended up taking their dog Maisie with them as well. On October 16th, 2009, a few hunters came across the pickup truck, which was parked in the middle of a dirt road in Panola Mountain. So it was basically in the middle of nowhere. Initially, the hunters didn't really think much of the truck because it looked like it belonged to a worker in the area, but as they got a bit closer to the truck, they actually peered inside looking through the windows, and they could see that at the back of the truck there was a really sick-looking, malnourished dog that was just laying on the back seats. They tried to get into the truck, but the doors were locked and the windows were shut, so the next best thing to do was to call the police. The police came and rescued the dog, and she actually ended up making a full recovery. But they also examined the truck because obviously the owners had abandoned it for a number of days now. Inside, they found some really strange stuff. So yeah, they found phones, a wallet, jacket, multiple items of clothing, and most bizarre of all was $32,000 of cash hidden in the truck, and also this crazy 11-page long letter that was written by Sherilyn addressed to her husband. The contents of this letter were kind of messed up. It was basically about her ranting about how he's so useless to their daughter Madyson, and complaining about how he's such a loner and how he just doesn't mix in with society and that she hates him. In the letters, she even stated that she wanted to get a divorce. So it was a very anger-fueled letter that she'd written. I mean, she'd written 11 pages of it. She must have been quite passionate. The police had no idea where these people had gone, so they decided to actually have a look at the GPS history on Bobby's phone to just see whether they could track their most recent moves. The GPS showed that they had actually been walking around in the vicinity of the truck, and they actually ended up walking 15 minutes away from it before returning back to it. So they knew that they were going to be in that area and that they may have gotten lost and they just couldn't find their truck again. So this is why they set out a big search party to check the area, but unfortunately it was unsuccessful. They couldn't find any trace of any family members. One of the pieces of evidence that was quite unsettling was the fact that on Bobby's phone, the latest picture he had was of his daughter Madeline. And it's very unclear as to what Madeline's expression is in this photo. She kind of looks scared, but she looks kind of happy as well. It's very hard to tell. And people also speculate that it looks like she's actually trying to pose for the photo, or it looks like someone told her to pose for the photo because she's got a little bit of fear in her eyes. After this, police had nowhere to go in terms of their investigation, so they decided to search the Jamison family's home and their home security footage to see if this could indicate that they were actually traveling to this location for a reason other than searching for a plot of land to buy. The footage from the security camera is so unsettling. It actually freaked me out so much when I was reading about this. The footage basically shows Sherilyn and Bobby walking back and forth from the truck to the house at least 20 times in this complete trance-like state. They didn't communicate with each other verbally or non-verbally at all during this time, and most of the time they were carrying bags back and forth, but sometimes they would just walk to the truck, just empty-handed, stare off into the distance, and then just walk straight back to the house. And this was done like on repeat. On one of the trips, Sherilyn was seen carrying this brown suitcase, which was not actually found in the truck or in their home. No one actually knows where this suitcase is still, and the contents of it remain unknown. The strange video still doesn't tell anyone any clues about their disappearance. This case actually ended up going cold for a number of years, until November 16th, 2013. Some deer hunters were in a very isolated location and they found 3 human skeletons, and these human skeletons were lying face down, side by side. They were found within about 4.3 kilometers from where the pickup truck was actually parked. The bones were examined, and who knows why, but it took about a year for the results to come back to confirm that these bones did belong to Bobby, Sherilyn, and Madyson Jamison. There was so much decomposition though that the forensic pathologists couldn't actually determine any cause of death. Although this did mean that some theories emerged, and I'm going to go through what those theories were. So there's three main theories, and the first theory is that Bobby and Sherilyn were not getting along, obviously. So this was evident by the 11-page long letter that Sherilyn addressed to Bobby. And it's thought that maybe Sherilyn murdered Bobby and her daughter with a weapon, and this weapon was most likely a gun. And the reason why people think this is because the skull that belonged to Bobby had a hole in it, which almost looked like a bullet hole. But the other skeletons didn't have this. Sherilyn's pistol was also missing from the car. She usually had it in the car. And it's thought that that strange brown suitcase that she packed in the car probably had the pistol in it. Although no weapon has ever been found near the bodies or in the vicinity of the bodies. Plus, people just thought that, Sherilyn wasn't the type of person that would ever want to harm her daughter. The second theory is that the family was murdered. So there's two suspects in particular. One was Bobby's dad, who recently he had a disagreement with, but he was actually in a rest home at the time and he was very unwell, so he wouldn't have been able to murder them. The second suspect was someone who used to board with the Jamison family. So this guy was extremely racist, and he got into an altercation with Sherilyn one day because of Sherilyn's ethnic background. She's part Native American, but this guy had an alibi, so it wasn't him. The other option is that someone that they didn't know possibly stopped them on the road, somehow coaxed them into getting out of the car and killed them, which is why there's that photo of Madyson that's a little bit unsettling. Like, it may have been that they made her pose for this photo and they took it on Bobby's phone. It's really unknown as to whether this would have happened, but why would they kill them, and why would they leave $32,000 in the car? It just doesn't really make any sense. The third theory is that the family went for a walk with the intention of returning back to their car, which is why they left their dog in the car and all of their belongings. But they probably got lost and they died due to the harsh weather conditions. Although it's thought that this may have not been the case as well, because at the time that they disappeared, the weather conditions were actually not too bad in the mountains. It wasn't too cold or too hot, so it's unlikely that this could have been the case as well. Although I do think that this is probably the most likely theory. And of course there are other theories too, which are pretty unpopular, but people think that it's a possibility. People think that it could have been aliens. They also think that it could have been a drug deal gone wrong, mainly because they had $32,000 in cash. And in the Panola Mountains, there's actually a lot of people that cook up meth that live there. But if it was a drug deal that was gone wrong, they would have stolen the $32,000 and they wouldn't have just left it in the car. So it probably wasn't that either. It is so frustrating not knowing, and to be honest, we probably will never find out what truly happened to the Jamison family. If you found that interesting, then please subscribe, because I post videos like this every single week, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.